story of Job?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the clip version. Job is this awesome guy. He's well thought of in the community, and he's just good and nice to everybody. All the other wives are saying to their husband, hey, why can't you be like Job? And so Job is doing this. He's got seven boys and 3 daughters. He's got over 3,000 camels and tons of stuff. He's very rich. The angels go up to God, and they're telling him what's going on. And Satan comes along, and Job says, have you seen my servant Job? And Satan said, well, yeah, duh, he has everything. Why wouldn't he love you and serve you? And God said, well, he would serve me anyway. And so he allowed Satan to do whatever he wanted, but he couldn't take his life. And so meanwhile, back at the ranch, suddenly Job, one thing after another, he loses all his livestock, he loses his camels, he loses his house, he gets word that all of his kids were together in one house, all 10 of them, can you imagine? And the house burned down, and every one of them perished. And so Job is just devastated. He goes and he tears his clothes. I guess they used to do that in the old days. And he sits on an ash heap, and he's devastated. And so what we're going to talk about today is, Judy talked about love God, love yourself, and love your neighbor. Well, how do we do that? How do we walk in love? So Job had, well, it looks like in the long run he had 4 friends, but in the beginning he had 3 friends, and they came from a long way. And when they first caught sight of him, they couldn't believe what they saw. This is from the Message. They hardly recognized him. They cried out in lament. They ripped their robes. They dumped dirt on their head as a sign of their grief. And then they sat with him on the ground 7 days and nights. They sat there and they didn't say a word. They could see how rotten he felt and how he was suffering. Now that's a friend. Have you ever been in a situation where you're just devastated? I mean, he lost everything. And his friends came in 7 days. They sat with him, and they didn't say a word. And I know sometimes when I've been hurting and friends come, they want to say a word. They want you to feel better right away, because if you feel better, they'll feel better. So they came to Job, they sat with him silently, and the biggest thing was they acknowledged his pain. You know, he knew that they knew he was in pain. And that is such a loving thing to do. And that's, to be a friend, to walk in love, that's what we do. We sit with people in their pain. Some of you know I'm the director of Esther's Place, and Angie's my co-director. Sometimes women come in and they're devastated, and sometimes people want to start telling them what to do. And we just sort of surround them, the volunteers there, and we just let them be sad, and we sit with them. They're sitting on the couch, we sit on the couch, we get them a cup of coffee, we just let them be. Because when you're pain, the last thing you want is a bunch of advice. So that was really good. That was the best thing his friends did. But then, you know how it is when you're grieving and when things are bad. There's a time limit. 6 months, you're done. Buck up, get on with it, because we're done. We're done feeling sorry for you. After the 7 days, all 3 of his friends, they each took turns. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And I'm telling you, that's like each one is a chapter. And they're telling him what he needs to do. Now, Angie, you were talking about the opposite of love is fear. Didn't I hear you say that earlier? They went from being loving to being in fear because all these friends probably looked up to Job. Job was probably like up here, and they're down here going, oh my gosh, he's so awesome. Well, if Job can fall, and he didn't do anything wrong, guess what? I can fall. Something can happen to me. So I got to figure out what he did so I can feel better about myself. Does that sound familiar to anyone? I'm sure we've all been in situations where that's happened. And so they all started standing up. I don't know, maybe they sat in the mud with him, and they were saying, Job, you did something. You sinned, you did something. Come on. Tell us, give it up. We know you're lying. We know something's going on because God doesn't do this with you. Okay, now why was Job in the heap? Who did stuff to him? Satan. Yeah, Satan, not God. But they're saying, God wouldn't do this. He wouldn't let it happen. Finally, Job says, look. So first, stop to be a good friend, to walk in love, stop. And then look. And he says, look me in the eyes. Do you think I'd lie to your face? Think it over. No double talk. Think carefully. My integrity is on the line. Can you detect anything false in what I say? Don't you trust me to discern good from evil? And I love that because that's what happens when people start to give us advice And they start to decide that maybe we're not okay. We don't know what we're talking about. And so being a good friend, being a good person to walk in love, you want to look at that person and you want to see him and you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, these friends, they knew that he was above board. They knew. But then they started to think, man, something must be wrong because everything's falling apart. Job asked them to see him. He asked them to remember who I am. You know, hey, remember, I was that guy. All the women wanted their husbands to be like me. He asked them to trust him. Can't you trust me? Can't you just see that I'm in pain and trust that whatever this is, you know, that it's not because I've done something horrible. Other words, I'm sure we've all been a victim of this. Stop trying to fix me. Have you ever had that happen when people try to fix you? And you're just like, man, can't you just listen? Can't you hear? And that's what love does. Love sees and hears what we're going through. Third is listens. So Job gets up. So what happens when people start telling us what we're doing wrong or what they think we've done? What do we do? We get walking away with, he should have done that. But you get kind of defensive, right? Job starts defending himself. And I love this. He says, I've had all I can take of your talk. What a bunch of miserable comforters. Is there no end to your windbag speeches? What's your problem that you go on and on like this? If you were in my shoes, or I think he's saying if I was in your shoes, I could talk just like you. I could put together a terrific harangue and really let you have it, but I'd never do that. I console and comfort and make things better, not worse. Job's basically saying, some friends you are. And I would like to think I'm like Job, that I would be that kind of friend, but I think we've all been on either side of that. And so walking in love, and so this is what I love. After the three friends, well, I don't think they're really friends, after they each give 3 speeches to poor Job, who's, I think he has boils on him and he's torn clothes and sitting in ash. This one guy, he's the youngest of them all, probably he's like 80. And he said, his name is Elihu, and he says, I've been listening to you guys, you're supposed to be the wise ones. I've been listening, and I got a few things to say. And what I think is funny about that is so many times we listen because we have something to say. Instead of listening to hear and really see what's going on, we listen because we have something to say. Elihu stands up, and he goes on too, and this is what I love. He says, I had to make it really big because Elihu says, do you 3 have nothing else to say? Of course you don't. You're total frauds. Why should I wait any longer? Now that you've stopped dead in your tracks, I'm ready to speak my piece. And he goes on, but then at the end, this is what I love. I love it because why was Job in the heap? Who did something to him? Satan, right? And he's saying, God hasn't given me a trial. He hasn't given me a chance, and I don't know what I've done. He says, oh, Job, don't you see how God's wooing you from the jaws of danger? How he's drawing you into wide open places, inviting you to feast at a table laden with blessings? Look at it, he's saying, Job, God's wooing you. You're sitting here saying, what's he doing to you? And Elijah turns the tables. He says, do you have any idea how powerful God is? Have you ever heard of a teacher like him? Has anyone ever had to tell him what to do or correct him, saying, you did that all wrong? Remember then, this is the Psalm 13. Praise him. Praise his workmanship, which is often celebrated in song. So here these 3 friends totally trash him because they're thinking, if he can get put in the ashes, I will too. And then the young guy, who's not so young, stands up and he's like, look, let's turn this around. He says, God is wooing you. Wouldn't that be cool to be that friend? When someone's in pain and saying, God is wooing you. He loves you. He wants good for you. And I know you want to blame him right now, but maybe you're looking in the wrong direction. First, Elihu calls the friends frauds. He sees Job, and he sees the misdirected part of him blaming, and then he urges him to be grateful. Isn't that what we're supposed to do when we're in pain? And it's not a false gratitude like, okay, well, I'm going to be thankful. But we can find a place in our heart to be thankful even in our pain. if we look and we trust. And Elihu, this is what I really love, is so the other guys, they're telling Job, you must have sinned. What have you done? Come on, give it up. What's your secret? What are you hiding? But Elihu, he asks these questions. Do you have any idea how powerful God is? That's a question. Have you heard of a teacher like him before? Asking the question, and I'm a life coach, and so I'm all about asking the questions. When I was starting to be a life coach, I was living on Whidbey Island. We raised horses, and so we were all on the horses at a neighbor down the road. And my kids loved that place because they had a trampoline, they had four-wheelers, they had a lake, everything you could want. And so when we were getting ready to leave, my middle son got on the horse with me and we're riding home, and he says, Mom, I wish I lived at the Thompsons. Okay, so of course, I'm thinking, of course, who wouldn't want to live there? They have everything. And then, you start to go to, I can't give my kid everything. But I stopped and I asked the question. I said, Davis, why is it that you want to live at the Thompsons? And he says, Mom, see this carabiner thing here? It fits right around the lock on the gate. He could use his carabiner and help them out by locking their gate. And I would have missed that. I would have just gone, yeah, whatever, but I got curious and I asked the question. And sometimes listening means asking the questions. So finally God speaks up after all of this, and he says, why do you confuse the issue? Why do you talk about knowing what you're talking about? Pull yourself together, Job, get up on your feet, stand tall. I have some questions for you, and I want some straight answers. Where were you when I created the earth? Tell me, since you know so much. And it goes on. Well, immediately, Job was humbled. Immediately, he realized, here I've been trying to tell God what to do and blaming him for not helping me out here. And who did this to Job? Satan. So all these three friends, everybody's focusing on God as Job sinning against God, when Job was so cool and so righteous that God went, hey, whatever, he's not going to turn on me. And he never did. And even his wife said, curse God and die. And sometimes that makes me laugh, but then when you think about it, she lost everything too, and now Job's sitting on a heap and he can't even support her. So God says, and I love this, because the friends get theirs. God says, I'll accept his prayer. After God finished addressing Job, he turned to the first friend. I can't even say their names. And he said, I've had it with you and your two friends. I'm fed up. You haven't been honest either with me or about me. Not the way my friend Job has. So here's what you must do. Take 7 bulls, 7 rams, and go to my friend Job. Sacrifice a burnt offering on your own behalf. My friend Job will pray for you, and I will accept his prayer. He will ask me not to treat you as you deserve for talking nonsense about me and for not being honest with me as he has. And notice he says something about the 3 friends, but not the last one, Elihu, who said, come on, look at God. He's pursuing you. So to walk in love, we need to stop. I live by a train track. We need to look and see, and we need to listen. And when I say listen, I mean hear. You know the difference? Have you ever had someone listen to you and they're like, yeah? Or when they really hear you and they get what you're saying, and if they don't, they ask more questions until they do? God condemns a friend. He chastised Job a little bit. You think you know everything, and he leaves Elihu alone. So to wrap up, stop, look, and listen. You're going to remember that this week. And try and listen to Job, or try to read it, because it's really amazing to see how Bible see. And the final thing is that I think so many times in our pain, we think it's about God. We think we're being punished. We get it mixed up. Because in the end, with Job, it was always about what a good man he was. It was never about anything else. It wasn't about his sin. It wasn't how he messed up. Probably kept the 10 Commandments. But it was all about what a great servant he was. And he was suffering to show that he would not walk away and he would not turn away from God. Job lived another 140 years, living to see his children and grandchildren, 4 generations of them, and then he died, an old man, full of life. So this week, when you want to love somebody, remember to stop, drop everything, look at them, see them, and listen to them. And that's where Psalms 13 comes right back in, where we praise the Lord and we say thank you and hallelujah. So let's close in prayer. Father, I just thank you so much for the story of Job. And thank you that all along it was never about you, but it was about his good character, Lord. And when we suffer, help us to remember that sometimes it may not be about anything but about us getting stronger for you and standing strong for you and letting others see you in us. And Father, I just pray that as we walk this week, we'll remember